Green Bay should probably be getting 2.5 points, maybe even 3 points based on the overall record. And it doesn't make sense. I don't understand the line. I just don't get it.
I made it Minnesota minus 248.5, which I think is right on or close to the total, and pretty much what you're saying, laying the two. I mean, let me take a look as I speak on what the opener was. But I mean, obviously, sharp money came in and moved the line because it's not the public that moved it, and
Correct.
so we've got. It started off Minnesota -1, and now I see it as a pick 'em everywhere. So yeah, I don't see +1s yet.
Well,
what did you say? What moved it?
Like sharp money, like big respected bettors.
Oh, they're not the public?
No. Not at all.
What are they?
It's pros against the Joes. The
Okay.
Professional bettors versus the Joe Q public.
And so does that mean that every time it's moved, it's pros against Joes, or only sometimes where you can see?
No, you have
the difference.
First of all, you don't get much early week action from the Joes because they really don't have the lines available. They don't establish their own opinions often. And Andy follows this really close. What I see is Minnesota open 1.5 or 2. And right now I've got bet 365 is Green Bay 1. Everybody has Green Bay except when you go over to this last column here. Let me see. This is FanDuel has, and I don't know if this is actually updated accurately, but they have Minnesota 1.5. Now, that's a big difference. But like I said, I can't promise you that's not technology and it's not really updated. But FanDuel,
so if it's moved early in the week, then you know it's the pros. But if it's moved like on the weekend close to the game, then that's the Joes.
Generally, you can't 100% say that.
Right.
Because, I mean, I know some late bettors that will go in and take value. Well, there's a positive EV, which is expected value, that comes into play. They don't care who's playing. They have power ratings, and you can take the names off the board. They never even care who the teams are.
They
just
play
look
numbers.
at the numbers. They play numbers, and they're different. They don't look and say, "Well, that quarterback and that coaching." They don't give a shit. They have
who puts these numbers together?
Well, you take a guy like Fezzik. I mean, he doesn't care. He just has a number, and he bets the number. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. It's to them, it's a number game.
So each of them have their own separate formulas, though. It's not like one.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of it is that if there's a 2.5 out there, you lay it. If there's a 3.5 out there, you take it.
Correct.
Doesn't matter the matchup.
That's correct.
The line history I'm looking at, DraftKings wise, it opened 2, and it's currently Minnesota 1. So they're the only book that I see that actually has Minnesota favored. Everything else is pick 'em. And Jim, I don't have bet 365, so you've got them favoring Green Bay.
I got like 20 books in front of me,
and then from what I'm seeing, most books are heavy on Green Bay money and handle at the moment. Not heavy on handle, but heavy on money.
Any news on Minnesota injuries or sitting players out?
Not that I've seen.
Well, they're not going to sit anybody out if they can play, because this number one seed is big.
And I think it may come down to the Detroit Minnesota game next week. Might end up deciding. I'm not sure how meaningful this game is for both teams.
No, it's very meaningful for Minnesota because they need to be in position.
Yeah.
So it's very meaningful.
What is the motivation for Green Bay? We know they're in the playoffs.
Right, I don't see there isn't.
I don't see any. Yeah,
they're pretty much committed to their seed.
So what the hell are they betting?
Yeah,
are these the same people? Is he the same pros that put the Packers as the what were they, the 2.5 point favorite against Seattle?
Well, a lot of these numbers, Greg, are based off power ratings. And a lot of that's why the Jets were favored a lot, because they were power rated higher than a lot of the teams that they were facing.
And the pros lost their asses all year long betting on them.
Yeah, absolutely, no question.
Including
I mean,
last week.
look,
I mean,
nobody's
they don't
saying
always
that this is
win.
right. This is just the why this line is what it is. But in this case, I agree with Jim that I would see from a number of reasons that I made Minnesota 2. I think that's the right number.
I agree with Tony.
I would say almost anything up to 3 would be playable.
I wouldn't lay 3, but I would be on the money line.
Money line, yeah.
I'm on the money line anyway in Minnesota. I get the Vikings on the money line.
Greg, another aspect of pros versus Joes or squares versus sharps that Tony just touched on is the fact that there's some websites out there that will reveal or will show you the amount of bets in a given game versus the amount of total money wagered in a given game. So if you see one side where the amount of bets or wagers is high, yet the majority of the money is on the other side, it means the higher dollar wagers. The whale money is on perhaps the other side. The sharper money is perhaps on the other side. So again, Tony touched on it. I'm sure Jim has access to that. Everybody here has access to some of the websites that reveal that key information as well.
The example, there's a lot of $20, $50 bettors out there in the world. And then you get all these $20 and $50 bettors come in throughout the week. And then you got one guy shows up at the window with $1 million. Well, there goes all the 20. I mean,
right.
Right. So that doesn't make the $1 million bettor the sharpest bettor in the world. That means he's just a very rich person.
Yep.
That made a play. But the $1 million might be Elon Musk, which is absolutely nothing to him. So
unless you know who it is and you follow that person, it really shouldn't affect you.
Right. If it's Billy Walters, then we follow along, right?
Yeah.
Well, the show that I do in Las Vegas at the restaurant, which we call the Pizza Show, and Andy lives in Las Vegas, he knows what I'm talking about. Well, Greg sees it too. The guys that are on the set, many of them are $50,000 and $100,000 bettors, and they win. And bookmakers don't want their action. And the only reason, and bookmakers have the right to turn away action. There's no law that says you must take someone's bet if you know who it is. So we had an interesting situation. The guy sitting next to me is a huge bettor and he's a huge winner. One of the biggest bookmakers in the world was sitting in the audience. The guy in the audience had previously hired the guy that was sitting next to me to help him settle his numbers after the guy next to me made his plays. That's respect.